Did you try to sell your half of the company or your part?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. And let me explain to you why I did.
At the age of 78, Daryl Hall finally said the words that decades of fans had wished to hear, those words carrying the burden of time, bitterness, and finality. It was more than the tale of a musical duo, more than a pop hit and world tour story. It was a tale of trust, betrayal, and the ultimate choices that would forever redefine how the world would perceive an immortally paired partnership. For half a century, the name Hall & Oates had been synonymous with success, with chart dominance, with an almost effortless blend of pop, soul, and rock that made them the most successful duo in music history. But behind the curtain, cracks had always existed, cracks that widened over the decades until finally they shattered. What unfolded between 2023 and 2025 wasn't simply a business dispute. It was the end of one of music's greatest legends laid bare before the public eye. And though fans might have hoped for reconciliation, Daryl Hall made it clear there would be no going back. When asked about his partnership with John Oates, Hall was blunt. "He's my business partner," he said. "Geez, look what I've stumbled into here. He's not my artistic collaborator. John and I are brothers, aren't we? But we're not artistic brothers. We're business brothers." Those cold-voiced words stunned fans who had grown accustomed to Hall & Oates being a one and the same. But for Hall, it was about time. Following years of collaboration, the pent-up hostilities were finally unleashed in late 2023, and no genie was going back into the bottle. It was not a song, not a show, not even a disagreement over artistic vision at the center of the war. It was business bleak, cold, and based on ownership. Hall Oates Enterprises, LLP, the joint venture Hall & Oates had formed, controlled the Hall & Oates brand image rights and portion of their royalties. For decades, it had been the framework keeping their legacy intact. Hall wished to maintain it, to retain control in their mutual hands, feeling that their brand, so iconic, so culturally significant, ought to be protected. Oates disagreed. In 2023, he was set to sell his stake in the company to Primary Wave, a dominant music rights buying collective. For Oates, the sale likely was a pragmatic business choice. For Hall, it represented the ultimate betrayal. It was a breach of trust, a behind-the-scenes maneuver that risked commercializing their legacy out of recognition and trusting their life's work to strangers. Hall did not accept the news quietly. In November 2023, he sued in Nashville, calling for an emergency injunction to prevent the sale. What had been a confidential disagreement suddenly burst into an open war. Suddenly, headlines around the globe bore the headline, "Daryl Hall suing John Oates." The ultimate partnership betrayal, as Hall put it, became a media spectacle. Hall maintained that no outside party could be permitted to rip asunder their estate, their heritage, and their brand. This was not merely about money. In his view, it was a matter of principle. The melodrama escalated rapidly. Hall publicly announced, "I will never perform with John again." The words struck fans like a hammer. For those who still held out hope that Hall & Oates would one day take the stage as a duo, this was the coup de grace. Hall's verbal sparring left no leeway for negotiation. The restraining order he gained temporarily put the sale on hold, holding the two men in a standoff. Oates, clearly distressed, denied wrongdoing. He expressed his deep disappointment at Hall's move to bring their personal business into the limelight. Once a cauldron of simmering tension, it had now reached the point of being an open sore laid bare before the whole world. The case went on in the courts for years until 2025, when it was resolved by way of confidential arbitration. Hall dropped the case, but his attitude did not change. In another statement, he conceded, "I haven't had a creative relationship with John for at least 25 years. For him, the enchantment that had characterized Hall & Oates was a long-forgotten thing, now replaced by a monotonous recitation of a common moniker. He presented Oates's bid to sell as the coup de grace, the final nail in the coffin of any prospect of coming together. For Hall, the betrayal wasn't merely business. It was being blindsided, learning that his business partner of half a century had proceeded without his input or permission. The affair was cataclysmic for Oates in another sense. In interviews, he conceded that the lawsuit wore him down, both as a person and a professional. He characterized it as ruining my life, a whirlwind of stress and public scrutiny, and yet, while Hall saw it as an irreparable wound, Oates chose to view it as liberation. He said the ordeal opened the door to a new chapter, a chance to step away from decades of creative inhibition. "I'm free now," Oates admitted, describing the lawsuit as painful but also strangely clarifying. For him, it was a breaking point that allowed him to pursue music on his own terms. To grasp why this breakup so wounded both men, one has to go back to the start, to an elevator in Philadelphia where two young men initially met. It was the late 1960s at Temple University. Daryl Hall, blonde, tall, and charismatic, was leading a local group immersed in the soul and R&B music of Philadelphia. John Oates, shorter and darker-haired, with a less boisterous intensity, was in his own band as well. Both were pursuing the same aspiration, an opportunity to go professional with music. One evening, while fate would have it, their respective bands were performing at the same function when a brawl erupted. Panic ensued, shots were exchanged, and both Hall and Oates took refuge in the same elevator. At that time, two strangers were brought together by circumstance. They met, shared a love of music, and soon thereafter agreed to collaborate. That chance encounter spawned one of the greatest musical duos in history. They obtained a recording contract, took on the name Hall and Oates, and stepped out into the professional world. Their initial albums were promising, but it was with tracks such as She's Gone that they started gaining widespread recognition. Then came Sarah Smile, a tune that melted hearts in all of America and established them in the music world. But their first major breakthrough was through Rich Girl, which reached the top of the Billboard Hot 100 and solidified that they weren't only skilled. Now they were invincible. Then the hits came pouring in one after the other. Kiss on My List, Private Eyes, I Can't Go For That, No Can Do, Man Eater. Their records' voices, Private Eyes, and H2O were atop the charts. Hall and Oates had done something that few duos ever managed by the mid-1980s, 6 #1 hits on the Billboard charts, over 80 million albums sold worldwide, and a spot forever etched in pop culture. They were the best-selling duo of all time, a record they still maintain. Their persona, Hall, with his golden locks and booming voice, Oates with mustache and guitar, was ubiquitous. They were not only musicians, but idols. The key to their success was balance. Hall's strong, adaptable voice stepped forward, with Oates filling in with harmonies, guitar playing, and a steadying influence. Together, they produced a sound that was new but ageless, a synthesis of pop, rock, and soul they termed as rock and soul. They defied genre conventions, showing that a duet could be as powerful as the largest bands or greatest solo artists. Their music captured the face of American pop for more than a decade. But under the flashy success, tensions were brewing. Hall was always more individually ambitious, wanting to try new things and make a name for himself outside of the duo. Oates gravitated toward folk, blues, and Americana, a more subdued route that undermined Hall's in-your-face pop rock sensibilities. Though they used the same stage name for decades, their artistic trajectories had long since split apart. By the 1990s, their collaborative chemistry was gone. Hall worked on solo projects, delivering sacred songs early in his career, and later anthologizing solo works in Before After 2022. In 2024, he delivered D, a duet with Eurythmics' Dave Stewart, working on contemporary pop rock and demonstrating that he was still creatively restless. In the meantime, Oates forged his own path with releases such as Funk Shui in 2002 and subsequent releases like Reunion and Oates, 2024 to 2025, exploring deep into folk blues and solo narratives. Both men had found their own sound, unique, apart, and growing incompatible. Hall himself captured it best. That ship has gone to the bottom of the ocean. To him, there was no salvaging future collaboration. For Oates, the breakup was bitter but freeing. He confessed their shared history was a miracle, but claimed that freedom was its own prize. The reality is that their relationship was never what fans had imagined. Hall has stated outright that they were never close friends. They were co-workers, professionally brothers, but not personally. On stage, they had responsibility, success, and celebrity in common. Off stage, they lived absolutely separate lives. Hall weathered failed marriages, health issues such as Lyme disease, and the weight of celebrity alone. Oates, on the other hand, established a healthy family life, marrying in 1994 and emphasizing balance. Their dissimilar lifestyles, philosophies, and values opened up a distance that only increased with the passage of time. With no personal rapport to rely on, their relationship was based purely on business and music, and when those pillars of support crumbled, there was nothing to keep them tied together. When the lawsuit broke out, their friendship was already a facade. The court fight only revealed what had always been the case. Hall and Oates were a name, not a relationship. After the lawsuit was over, so was the fantasy. Today, both men go their separate ways. Daryl Hall, now in his late 70s, still performs, still records, and still moves ahead. His work with Dave Stewart demonstrated that he still has new ideas and an unextinguished creative spark. His solo concerts fill seats with people hungry to hear both his old standards and his new experiments. For Hall, music is a lifeline, a means by which to declare that his identity is not solely synonymous with a duet of the past. John Oates, as well, has taken to independence. With records such as Reunion and Oates, he offers a raw, intimate sound drawn from folk and blues, far from the slick pop of the 1980s. His live shows give off an air of confidence created by liberty, the liberty to at last leave Hall's shadow and stand as an artist. For Oates, this phase of life is less about chasing fame and more about authenticity, about creating music that reflects who he truly is. Their legacies are distinct, but bound together through history. Their fans can bemoan the demise of Hall and Oates, but their discography will never die. Songs such as Man-Eater and I Can't Go For That continue to resonate, continue to play on the radio and streaming sites, continue to show up in movies and advertisements. Their impact on popular, rock, and soul music is indelible. And so the tale of Hall and Oates concludes not with reunion, not with reconciliation, but with two men now free to walk their own paths. For Hall, it is a matter of demonstrating he can succeed on his own terms. For Oates, it is a matter of casting aside decades of being the other half and embracing singularity. Fans will always remember the magic, the elevator in Philadelphia, the string of chart-topping hits, the decades of performances that defined an era. But behind that magic lay a partnership that was never truly friendship, a bond that was professional rather than personal. And in the end, that truth explains why their story had to end the way it did. Not with harmony, but with dissonance, honesty, and a final break. But perhaps the best legacy of all is that even broken, even split, the music they made together lasts, ringing through the ages. Hall and Oates might be over, but their music is forever.